Welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover Podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King. Don't know if you're listening to this one second in terms of your podcast for today. Obviously, we're double dipping here with a couple new episodes. This morning we had the Big Cat weekend chatter and possible football commitments we were talking about, and then we've got a pivot. We teased it a little bit on the other one, but we're going to pivot a little bit here to basketball because it's been an eventful last 24 hours. Aden Holloway was pretty much, was it Tuesday? So Aden Holloway was
Tuesday.
Monday night. And
Monday night,
yeah, Mark, so I'm joined here by Mark Murphy, of course. Not a bad cornerstone for the 2023 class. So Aden Holloway is a high 4-star point guard, really can play both guard spots. And Mark, we were just talking before we started about how good his tape is. Really just sort of jumps off the page to you, and it's no surprise now because of the success Bruce Pearl has had with these kinds of players that you have a blueprint for guys like this. But to me, it just screams Bruce Pearl guard, the way that he plays basketball, and so a great start for them in the 2023 class.
Yeah, I like his game a lot, Nathan. You know, he does a lot of things well, not just two or three. He's a really good ball handler. He's a creative passer. And one thing, excuse me, I really like is you can't really get too close to him. If you do, he'll blow right past you. But you got to guard him closely because he's got this little nice fadeaway jump shot. And he can get that shot anytime he wants to. And I'm impressed with him. He's a good passer. He likes to set his teammates up. And to me, he just looks like a guy who's interested in winning basketball games. And that's where I think the culture fit is with him and Bruce Pearl and Auburn, Nathan.
Yeah, and really, I mean, you look at he was considering as kind of his plan to commit at Peach Jam in Augusta, then push things back a little bit. But I mean, he had some games there at Peach Jam where you're talking about some of the best players in the country on the floor. He was on the floor with Bronny James at one point, and he absolutely held his own with anybody out there and looked like one of the best players on the court. Just how important is he for this 2023 class? Because if you're thinking about it, these are the guys now that, you know, if things break the right way for Auburn this season, you could have a decent bit of guys no longer on this roster anymore. You know, some newcomers, the right way. But if things work out the right way, that'd be good for their season. But at the same time, things would probably get a little dicey in terms of roster management. So I think 23 and 24 are those pivotal classes for you to, when this roster flips over, when all the people who are here currently are no longer here, it's going to be really important. And it seems like in terms of what you've got building moving forward, I know they could get a lot of good players in this 23 class, and Holloway could just be the start.
Yeah, Zeb Jasper is a graduate student this year, so this is his last season, and they got to replace him at point guard. And I think this is a really good addition, talent-wise, skill-wise, and just temperament to handle that role. Zep's a real good leader out there, and he played really well in the exhibition game and played real well in his first season with Auburn. So let's see what kind of Pied Piper effect this 4-star commitment's going to have. He's working it, and there's a lot of good talent out there, and Auburn's had some good players in for official visits. And, it's one of those deals. Nothing succeeds like success. And they see, 2 first-round draft picks. They see other guys playing well. They see, SEC championship, see lots of television time. So Auburn's pretty hot right now in the college basketball world, and Bruce Pearl's going to try to take advantage of it with this recruiting class.
Yeah, if you've got Aden Holloway here as the number 30 player in the class in the 24/7 composite, directly behind him is a guy named Wesley Yates, another high 4-star guard there at the off guard position. Talking about a guy that maybe could be affected by this. They're supposedly pretty tight. So like you said, we'll see the effects of this moving forward. Now, normally, you talked about television time. Normally, Auburn's got some visitors in for Big Cat, but of course they couldn't do that because they were leaving for Israel, and they played their first game in their Israel foreign tour today on Tuesday against the Israeli under 20 men's national team, of course. This was a lot of fun. We were talking about it earlier today, and I was kind of asking you, what to expect from a game like this in early August. And then I remembered when they went to Italy, I mean, it wasn't televised, and so this was something that was obviously really cool to see, and great recruiting tool for Auburn to just have this chunk to itself and have ESPN there with them. But in terms of what we actually watched on the court, took about 3 or 4 minutes for everybody to get loose and get rolling. And then it was, I mean, just completely overmatched. So Auburn wins today, 117-56. Pretty much everybody got theirs, but the two leading scorers were your two new front court newcomers. The leading scorer overall was Johan Traor. He had 20 points and 8 boards. And then Janai Broom, he only missed one shot. He was 8 of 9 from the floor, 9 rebounds, and 4 blocks. And so pretty good game for them. But at the same time, for me, it might have been Chance Westry and Dylan Cardwell as the biggest standouts, just because we didn't really know what to expect from them. But just your impressions of the game overall. There were a lot of guys who did a lot of good things, but there were a couple who sort of stood above in this game against certainly overmatched competition. But it's still obviously great to be able to get some takeaways from these guys at such an early point of the year.
I thought Dylan Cardwell was in beast mode all night, and he was impressive. First college double-double. He was very efficient. I liked his little jump hook he shot. He's been practicing that for the last couple of years, and boy, if he gets that down, that's a very tough shot to deal with. One of the big questions this year is, you replace 2 first-round draft pick inside guys, and I thought the inside game was good. Now, let's be honest, this team wasn't as strong as what Auburn was expecting.
Yeah.
Apparently there were some military obligations, and guys who normally play on that under 20 team weren't there. They had to call up some guys from the under 18 teams. So there was a few physical mismatches, but Auburn had some older guys, but they're not all that much older. And Auburn spent a lot of time in practice leading up to these games, working on slowing down the Israeli, offenses by 3/4 court, full court pressure. And I thought they did a pretty good job because, the under 20 team took a lot of bad shots, particularly in the first and second quarters. Their shooting percentage was hard at halftime, and they started hitting some 3-pointers in the second half, but by then it was way over with. And I thought everybody played pretty well. I was particularly impressed with Chance Westry, but I've been impressed with him since the first time I saw him in practice, Nathan.
Yeah, so he's a guy that when talking to Bruce, first of all, it's Chance Westry is so intriguing and kind of a hilarious situation because, like, not an afterthought, but like people were so excited about getting Traore, the 5-star, and then you get Janai Broom. He's a big front court pickup in the transfer portal. I think Westry's like the number 6 recruit ever to come to Auburn. He's like the number 40 player overall in the class, and like you said, as soon as he hit the court, you could kind of see some of those flashes of talent. And Bruce said, he's going to play the 1, 2, and the 3. The first time he checked into the game, he was running point for them, and so you got to see his passing ability, just an absurdly quick first step. There wasn't anybody in that building, and probably not many, but I don't know if anybody on Auburn's roster to be able to stay in front of him. Just the ability to kind of explode to the basket. I mean, he's 6'5", 6'6", something like that. So the length in terms of the extension once he gets to the rack. Just looking at people kind of reacting to the game on Twitter today and people who were watching it. Yeah, I think obviously he wasn't the biggest scorer of the game. He was the third leading scorer with 13 points, 3 assists, 3 steals, 1 rebound, and a turnover. So but I think maybe he was the most impressive in terms of just immediately right off the bat. He's a complete newcomer in that wing kind of guard spot. Seems like he'll have a pretty good opportunity to contribute for them this season if this first viewing is any indication.
Broom played the most minutes of anybody, 19 minutes, 11 seconds. And boy, I thought he was really good. He was a man on the boards, both offensively and defensively. And, I remember when he played against Auburn last December at Neville Arena, I was very impressed with him, how he handled himself against Walker Kessler. And I'm not surprised he played well. He's been working really hard on his game. He's been working on his mid-range shot. He didn't take any 3-pointers, but he's been working on that because, Bruce Pearl likes his big guys to be able to shoot outside to open up space to let the guards penetrate. Another thing that stood out to me, Nathan, I thought Alan Flanagan played well. He's definitely a lot quicker. It's something we've written about this summer and even back in the spring. He's a lot healthier than he was when he came out off. I guess it was like a week or so before Christmas. He played his first game last season after having the Achilles surgery. He was obviously limited as far as quickness, particularly his lateral quickness, but he looked more like his old self. And, he's a versatile guy. He could play the 2 and he could play the 3. And in a pinch, he can play the point guard, but I don't think they're going to need him to play point guard this year. They got plenty of point guards. And I thought all those guys played well. Trey Donaldson, one of the new guys, 6'2", 190 freshman guard who, was recruited in football too. He did some good things in his time in there, and he's not going to back down from anybody, which is what Bruce Pearl's looking for from a true freshman.
Yeah, so Flanagan obviously, took advantage of that draft process and, found out what he needed to work on through there. The other half of that was Dylan Cardwell, who went through, exclusively just because of the, no risk, high reward, factor that the NBA draft process is. Obviously, he wasn't a guy that was going to get drafted, but just like you said, his steady progression in terms of his offensive game, maybe he might be a guy now this season that sort of turns the corner on offense. He's just been so reliable as a rebounder, and boy, he's such an efficient shot blocker last year in terms of like per minute, blocking shots in the SEC. So yeah, it's not something they've needed him to do, but you talked about it today. The post moves were there. I thought, on pick and rolls, he was really smooth getting to the basket. Again, this is a lot lower level of competition. So, we'll talk about the rest of it now. As I understand it, so now we've got the next game is Sunday, so it's a pretty long break here until they play again. First up, it'll be the select all-star team from Israel, and then the finale is against just straight up the Israeli national team, where you might have a current NBA player to go up against. So that'll probably be a pretty big challenge there on that last day.
Yeah, they could easily get beat in that game against the Israeli national team, which has played some really good teams well in international competition. I believe one of those was the United States Olympic team they played tough against. So, the competition level is going to probably go up. The select team is supposed to have pro players from Israel. Now, who's going to be playing at this particular time in the middle of summer for the select team? That's hard to say. How organized they're going to be as an all-star team is difficult to know for sure. But I do think it's probably going to be a more talented opponent than they played in game one against the under 20 team. And but still, there are a lot of things to like, Nathan. And, one of the things, it's kind of a crazy stat, is Dylan Cardwell averaged almost a rebound per minute on the court. He was out there for 16 minutes. He had 14 rebounds. He also had 12 points. And that's a guy who needed something like that for his basketball confidence. His confidence in life is not a problem for Dylan. Confidence in basketball is a big deal.
Yeah, he said classic Dylan after the game said, "Yeah, thanks to everybody for missing all those shots so that I could grab those rebounds." Yeah, it's the identity of Bruce Pearl's teams over the years, just one of several parts of their identities. It's just the ability to play loose year in and year out, and that's not something that develops over the course of the year. Of course, it gets better. It's just kind of something that's bred in the program, because here you are in August, where this team's only been together not too long, but you had, I think they were up 37 at the time when Chris Moore and Katie Johnson were going crazy over a ball that got knocked out of bounds. Not a steal, but Chris Moore jumping in front of it and knocking it out of bounds, and Katie Johnson went nuts. Dylan had like a putback slam when they were up 40 and just went crazy and turned toward the crowd. So if this one showing is any indication, the emotion and the passion that Bruce Pearl teams have grown to play with here at Auburn are not going to be changing this season. One last thing, Mark, I want to talk about was just something I was talking about with somebody earlier today, as we just sort of talk about this team in general. It is interesting to me that it seems like for the first time in a while, I don't know if you exactly have a true proven alpha on this team. And I just wonder what that might mean for this team. Whether it's a good thing, everybody just kind of jockeying for position, trying to take up that top spot. Because, of course, you had Jabari Smith last season. Before that, maybe you had a toss up. Alan Flanagan sort of emerged as that guy. And certainly when Sharif Cooper was on the floor, he was the floor general. But before that, Isaac Okoro. Before that, it was Jared Harper running the offense. And so it is really interesting to me. I think Janai Broom could end up being like the best player on this team, but the fact that this might be more of an overall team offense as opposed to what they've had in the past couple seasons, and maybe we might see more of that as we continue watching these games in Israel.
Yeah, they can easily go 12 deep with good players, and Bruce Pearl has a history of using his bench a great deal. And you're right, this might not be a team that has one guy who is averaging 15 or 16 points a game. But I mean, there's guys that could be that guy. Wendell Green could certainly be that guy. And I agree with you about Janai Broom could be that guy. And if Alan Flanagan continues to improve as a senior, he's got the potential to be that guy. It was a preseason All SEC guy last year, going by from the league's coaches before he got hurt. So, obviously they think a lot of him, and he's a guy the pros have been certainly keeping an eye on, and a player that really improved during his time at Auburn until he got hurt. And one other thing I want to, just mention too, I think it's interesting. I've covered Auburn a while, and I never thought I would see an exhibition basketball game in the middle of the summer being carried on a national sports channel television network. And that's Bruce Pearl, working that angle and marketing it. And there's not a lot of really good stuff on TV right now. And he convinced the network to go ahead and show this thing live. And so he's going to get 3 games of free publicity from Israel, and they're doing it upright. And if you notice the center court, he had Auburn colors, Auburn logo on it. So, he doesn't miss a whole lot of chances to sell Auburn, and Auburn basketball in particular.
Yeah, nothing is by accident here. And Jason was talking about that when we were just on the previous podcast, that pretty much the whole halftime show was like an entire Auburn recruiting pitch, basically saying, hey, look what the kinds of things you'll get to do on this team. Oh, and by the way, they produce, top 5 overall picks and win SEC championships. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. I was kind of taking the pulse of everybody else, and it seemed like there were a lot of people not Auburn fans, just because, like you said, there's not much on TV right now in terms of college, not college baseball, but professional baseball is probably chief among that. And so, if you're a basketball person, you're tuning in and watching because Auburn has made itself into a brand over the past several seasons under Bruce. And so the next game will be on Sunday. It's easy to remember because they are all at noon Central Time, and they're all on SEC Network. So the next game, again, against the select all-star team in Israel, is on Sunday. So that'll do it for us today. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please go leave us a 5-star review. That is the number one thing that helps us out. We will, of course, we're about to get into fall camp, which is going to be crazy. We'll have all kinds of coverage from that. We'll be podcasting from that, all of our observations and whatnot. And then, of course, me and Mark will hop back on here after that next game on Sunday, and then the one last game against the national team when they close things out. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, everybody. Everybody enjoy the rest of the week, and we will talk to y'all later.